Tampons. This is not a joke, and it is not a hack. Tampons are sterile, highly absorbent, individually wrapped wound packing material. Tactical combat casualty care, the field medicine protocol used by the United States military, specifically documents improvised wound packing using tampons when dedicated hemostatic gauze is unavailable. The applicator version creates a delivery tube for packing deep puncture wounds. The cotton expands on contact with blood and applies internal pressure to a bleeding cavity. Every first aid kit should have them, regardless of the gender of the people in your household. They cost almost nothing. They take up no space. And in a penetrating trauma scenario without access to emergency services, they are doing the same job as a product that costs $40 in a tactical medical kit. Crayons. A standard crayon burns for approximately 30 minutes. The wax is the fuel, the paper wrapper is the wick, and the geometry is almost perfect for a short-term emergency candle. A box of 24 crayons is nearly 12 hours of light. They're also waterproof, which means they store indefinitely without degrading. Melt several together into a single larger form around a proper wick, and you have a candle that burns for hours. Keep a box in your car, emergency kit, in your go bag. They weigh almost nothing, and most people never think of them as fire tools. Chapstick. 3 separate survival functions in one tube. The waxy petroleum base catches a spark and holds a flame long enough to transfer fire to tinder. Apply it to a cotton ball, and you have one of the most reliable fire starters available at any drugstore. It seals minor cuts and cracks skin against infection and moisture loss in cold or dry conditions, which matters more than it sounds when you are 3 days into a situation where a small infected cut becomes a serious problem. And applied to the inside of goggles or glasses lenses, it prevents fogging in cold environments. 1 tube, 3 functions, costs $1. Hand sanitizer. 60% ethanol minimum, which means it burns cleanly with a nearly invisible flame and with enough heat output to ignite damp tinder that a match or lighter alone would struggle with. Squeeze a small amount onto your tinder bundle, light it, and you have several seconds of sustained heat at the base of your fire. It also works as an emergency wound sterilizer in the absence of anything better, though it stings significantly on open tissue. The alcohol concentration that makes it effective as a sanitizer is the same concentration that makes it flammable. Keep a bottle in every bag, every car, every kit. Superglue. Here's the history that most people do not know. Cyanoacrylate, the chemical in superglue, was developed during World War II. While researchers were looking for clear plastic for gun sights, they found it too sticky and set it aside. In the Vietnam War, field medics began using it to close wounds on soldiers who would not survive long enough to reach surgical care. It worked. It stopped bleeding, held tissue edges together, and reduced infection rates in field conditions. The United States military formally evaluated it, and medical-grade cyanoacrylate wound closure strips are now standard in trauma kits. The super glue in your kitchen drawer is not medical grade, but the chemistry is close enough that in a genuine emergency, a deep laceration, no sutures available, no way to reach care, a thin application along the closed edges of a clean wound will hold it together. Apply only to the skin surface, never inside the wound. It is a last resort, not a first choice, but it is a last resort that has saved documented lives and that you already own. Dental floss. Waxed dental floss has a tensile strength of approximately 20 to 25 lbs, depending on the brand. That is enough to function as fishing line for small to medium fish, emergency cordage for shelter construction, replacement bootlace, tripwire for a perimeter alarm, and in extremis, suture material. It is also one of the cleanest and most sterile cordage materials available in a household because it comes sealed in a dispenser. A single standard container holds about 50 micrometers. It weighs nothing, takes up no space, and unlike paracord, which most people remember to pack, dental floss is already in every bathroom in the developed world. Pack a spare container in every kit you own. Bleach. Most people know bleach purifies water. Almost nobody knows the correct ratio, which means they either undertreat and leave pathogens alive or overtreat and make the water toxic. The correct ratio for standard 6% sodium hypochlorite household bleach is 8 drops per gallon of clear water, 16 drops per gallon of cloudy water. Stir, wait 30 minutes. Smell for faint chlorine. If you cannot smell chlorine after 30 minutes, repeat the dose and wait another 15. The ratio changes if your bleach concentration is different. 8.12% bleach, which is increasingly common, requires 6 drops per gallon. Check the label. Get this number right and write it on the bottle in permanent marker right now before you need it under stress in the dark. Feminine pads. Sterile, non-adherent, highly absorbent, individually wrapped, and designed specifically to manage blood. Everything those properties describe is also exactly what field burn dressing protocol calls for. A large feminine pad applied to a burn wound is doing the same job as a sterile burn dressing from a first aid kit. It absorbs weeping fluid, does not adhere to the wound surface, and provides a barrier against contamination. Military field medicine references improvised burn dressings using feminine hygiene products specifically because of these properties. Keep them in your first aid kit alongside the tampons. Both items are doing serious medical work that their marketing has never once communicated. WD-40. The name stands for Water Displacement 40th Attempt. It was developed in 1953 to protect the outer skin of the Atlas missile from rust and corrosion. What most people do not know is that the primary carrier solvent is flammable, which means WD-40 will catch and hold a flame. It is not a great fire starter, and I'm not recommending it as your first choice. But in a situation where you need to get wet wood burning and have nothing else, a light coating on your kindling will help. More usefully, it displaces water from metal surfaces more effectively than almost anything available at the same price point, which means ferrous tools that have gotten wet, knives, axes, saw blades, treated with WD-40 and wiped dry will not rust in storage. For long-term tool preservation, a coat of WD-40 followed by a coat of proper oil is the standard. Know what it was built to do and use it accordingly. A pencil. Graphite is a dry lubricant. The same properties that make it slide across paper make it reduce friction between metal surfaces. A standard pencil rubbed along the teeth of a sticky zipper, inside a stiff lock mechanism, or along the binding edge of a swollen wooden door will reduce friction significantly without the moisture introduction that oil-based lubricants bring. Moisture causes its own problems in cold environments or with certain materials. In a situation where a frozen lock or a jammed mechanism is a genuine problem and no lubricant is available, the pencil in your bag is a functional tool. Rub the graphite directly onto the surface, work the mechanism repeatedly, and the graphite transfers and seats into the friction points. Nail polish. Clear nail polish seals things. Thread ends on fraying cordage sealed with a drop of nail polish stop unraveling indefinitely. The backs of heels in new boots, coated with a thin layer before wear, prevent blisters from forming by reducing friction before skin breaks down. A small crack in a water vessel coated internally with several layers of dried nail polish will hold for emergency water carrying. A compass needle stroked against a magnetized surface and then sealed with a drop of nail polish retains its magnetic orientation longer. And perhaps most practically, small holes in tent fabric, tarps, or rain gear filled with clear nail polish and allowed to dry completely create a waterproof seal that holds through significant weather. One small bottle does all of these things and weighs almost nothing. Rubber bands. The mechanical energy stored in a stretch rubber band is enough to propel a small projectile at meaningful velocity, which is the entire operating principle of a slingshot. More practically, thick rubber bands wrapped around the grip of any smooth-handled tool, an axe, a knife, a shovel, dramatically increase grip security in wet conditions. Wrapped around the bottom of a jar lid, they provide enough friction to open almost any stuck lid without tools. Stretched across the open top of a container, they provide a measuring reference, a cord anchor, or a tensioning element for improvised repairs. Keep a handful of heavy-duty rubber bands in every kit. They weigh nothing and the number of small mechanical problems they solve quietly is significant. Aspirin. Beyond pain management, which is already valuable enough, aspirin dissolved in water functions as a plant antifungal treatment that has been documented in agricultural research going back decades. The salicylic acid in aspirin is chemically related to the natural defense compounds plants produce in response to fungal attack. A solution of 1 regular aspirin dissolved in 1 liter of water sprayed on infected leaves measurably reduces fungal spread in tomatoes, squash, and cucumbers. In a garden that is your food supply rather than a hobby, the ability to treat fungal blight with something from your medicine cabinet rather than a product from a garden center matters. 2 aspirin tablets per liter applied every 2 weeks through the growing season can be the difference between a productive harvest and a failed one. The Mylar emergency blanket. Most people own one of these. Almost nobody understands what it actually does beyond reflecting body heat. The reflective aluminized surface that bounces radiated heat back toward the body also reflects infrared radiation. All infrared radiation, including the wavelengths used by thermal imaging cameras. A person wrapped in a Mylar emergency blanket is significantly less visible to thermal imaging technology than a person in standard clothing because the blanket is reflecting rather than emitting infrared radiation. This has been tested, documented, and discussed in survival and privacy communities for years. It is not perfect. The blanket itself has edges, and body heat can radiate from exposed areas or transfer through contact with the ground. But the thermal signature reduction is real and significant. The same $3 blanket that keeps a lost hiker alive in cold weather is also one of the most accessible and portable tools available for reducing thermal visibility. Know what you own. Beyond the thermal imaging use, Mylar reflects approximately 90% of radiated heat, which means it functions as an emergency oven lining, a solar water heater reflector, a signal mirror visible at significant distance, and a ground barrier that dramatically reduces conductive heat loss when sleeping on cold surfaces. One blanket, $4. Most people fold it up and forget about it. Do not forget about it. Do not. Condoms. Unlubricated latex condoms hold approximately 2 L of water without breaking when filled slowly and handled carefully. That is a water-carrying and storage solution that weighs nothing, packs into any pocket, and costs almost nothing per unit. The same latex stretched over the muzzle of a firearm keeps water, dirt, and debris out of the barrel without affecting the ability to fire. The bullet passes through on firing without meaningful velocity loss, a technique documented in military field manuals. Stretched flat and used as a sling, the elastic recovery force is enough to assist with light tourniquet pressure as a secondary layer. And as fire-starting material, dry latex catches and holds a flame longer than paper. The use cases are not intuitive. The item is already in most households. The gap between those two facts is worth closing. Charcoal from your grill, not activated charcoal, though activated charcoal is better for this purpose. Regular hardwood charcoal from a bag of briquettes, the same absorption principle that makes activated charcoal the emergency room treatment of choice for certain types of poisoning, applies at a reduced efficiency to regular hardwood, charcoal crushed and used as a rough filtration layer in an improvised water filter layered with sand and gravel in a container with drainage holes. It removes a meaningful percentage of organic contaminants, odors, and some chemical compounds from water. It does not remove pathogens. Filtered water still requires chemical treatment or boiling. But in a situation where water smells or tastes of chemical contamination and you have nothing else, a charcoal filtration layer is doing real work. The bag in your garage right now has survival utility you have never thought about. Reading glasses. Any convex lens concentrates light. The reading glasses on your nightstand, held at the correct focal distance above dry tinder on a bright day, will start a fire. This is not fast. It requires patience, the right angle, and genuinely dry, fine tinder. But it works. It requires no fuel, no battery, and no components that can fail. If you wear prescription glasses with convex lenses, your glasses work. If you carry a cheap pair of reading magnifiers, they work. The focal length varies by magnification strength. Stronger magnification means shorter focal distance and a smaller, hotter point. In practice, 2.5 to 3 diopter reading glasses produce a focal point hot enough to ignite char cloth or fine dry grass in under 30 seconds of bright, direct sunlight. Know the focal distance of whatever you are carrying before you need it under stress. Zip ties. The mechanical holding force of a heavy-duty zip tie at full tension is over $100. That is enough to serve as emergency splint securing over improvised padding, temporary structural repair on broken equipment, improvised handcuff in a security situation, and tourniquet assist when used in combination with a stick as a windlass. They also function as improvised hinges, frame joints, fence repairs, and gear attachment points on packs or shelters. Keep a variety of sizes. The small ones that come in electronics packaging are not the ones you want. Buy a bag of heavy-duty 200 milliliters rated zip ties and distribute them across every kit, every bag, and every vehicle. They cost almost nothing per unit, and the mechanical problems they solve with zero tools required is a longer list than most people have ever thought about. Lip balm on a light bulb. This one is specific and practical in a way that does not fit a survival narrative, but matters in extended grid down situations where you are relying on salvaged equipment. A thin coating of lip balm on the thread of a light bulb before installation prevents the metal from corroding and seizing into the socket. A problem that becomes significant when bulbs have been in place for months or years in humid conditions, and you need to change them without breaking the bulb in the socket. The same principle applies to any threaded metal connection, pipe fittings, bolt threads, spark plug threads that you want to be able to remove later without damage. Beeswax works better if you have it. Lip balm works in its absence. The waxy barrier prevents oxidation at the thread interface, and the connection comes apart cleanly when you need it to. A phone screen. The aluminosilicate glass on a modern smartphone screen has a reflectivity of approximately 20% in direct sunlight. That sounds modest. At distance, reflected sunlight from a phone screen is visible to the naked eye at up to 10 mph under good conditions and detectable at further range by aircraft with optical equipment. The international distress signal using a mirror or reflective surface is one of the most effective long-range signaling methods available. More reliable than smoke in windy conditions, more visible than color panels at distance, and far more energy efficient than any electronic signaling device. Tilt the screen to catch direct sunlight. Use the shadow of your finger on the screen to aim the reflected spot toward your target. Flash 3 times. Pause. Flash 3 times. The universal distress pattern. The phone in your pocket that is out of battery, out of signal, and seemingly useless is still a signaling mirror as long as the sun is out. That is not nothing. In the right situation, that is everything. None of these require purchasing anything. None of them require special training. Every single one of them works because of chemistry or physics that has been understood for decades that nobody thought to write on the packaging. The gap between prepared and unprepared is almost never about equipment. It is almost always about knowledge. What a thing is made of, what that material can do, what the physics of the situation allows. You already own all of this. Now you know what you own. If these hidden survival secrets change the way you look at the everyday items in your home, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. We are uncovering the practical wisdom and history that often gets overlooked. Let's build a more prepared future together. The next set of life-saving insights will be revealed soon.